Hi, I'm Jay.
And I'm R.
In this video, we're going to do a breakdown of a video by Prager University on why they believe the mind is separate to the body. So let's begin.
In the external or physical world, we're all aware of standard cause and effect, right? You know, object A acts upon object B with force X. We all get that because it applies to just about everything from electrons to athletes.
It applies to just about everything? I wonder what Newton would think about that. You might be able to argue that it doesn't apply to quantum physics, but I hardly doubt you're about to drop a paradigm-shifting physics lesson on us.
But now consider events in your internal or mental world. What causes your thoughts?
Environmental stimulus and neurochemistry. We know that one. I'm not sure what you mean by external and internal worlds. The mind is directly a result of the physical world, and while you could argue that consciousness and experience are part of the internal world, we can measure and influence the mind directly through the physical world, so far there is no evidence to suggest they are separated in any way.
Some of our thoughts have external causes, like when we touch something and suddenly realize it's hot. We don't deliberate whether or not to pull our hand away, right? Our brain has already fired the instruction to do so, involuntarily. In some strange sense, we didn't really pull our hand away at all, because we didn't choose to do it. Our brain did it, before consulting us.
That's actually incorrect. The spinal cord deals with reflex actions like that, though it is part of the central nervous system and your brain will eventually get feedback after the movement has occurred. However, the spinal cord deals with both the stimulus and the effect in this example, and your brain has no input. Also, you seem to have started with the premise that mind-body dualism is true. There is no real evidence to suggest that, because everything we do know about consciousness and human experience begins and ends with the brain. So neuroscience basically shows us that you are just your neurochemistry interacting with external stimuli.
A second cause of our thoughts is internal. Say you're thinking about giving a big presentation, and as you do so, you get increasingly nervous and your blood pressure and your heart rate jump up. Now, nothing external is acting upon you. You're doing all the causing internally, right? Your anxious thoughts are causing your brain to send signals to your heart, and we get that.
The example you gave isn't strictly internal. The existence of the presentation you'll be presenting is external to the brain, making it an external stimulus. The response is generated inside the brain and is an internal process, making your example both internal and external. Look at it this way. Consider the presentation to be A, the thoughts of the presentation to be B, and the physiological output to be C. Yes, process B and C are internal, but A is external and causes the entire process. A better example of an internal stimuli would be a memory or dream, where the stimulus for any thoughts or physical reactions is a result of a stimulus which originates within the brain itself. However, terms such as internal and external really aren't useful in explaining neurochemistry, because it requires the nervous system to be isolated as a single structure, which simply isn't true. Certain parts of the brain trigger other areas of the brain through synapses, and therefore a stimulus could be deemed external to that particular area of the brain, but still have originated within the brain itself. You see how messy this gets. It's just a bad choice of terminology.
But now I want you to consider a third category of your thoughts. It's your conscious choices. Something as simple as choosing where to go for lunch. Now, when you introspect, when you think about your thinking, do you believe that you're the active agent in charge of the process, or that you're just a passive recipient of the instruction?
All of this is dependent on how the word you is defined. If someone defines it as the conscious ability to construct ideas and choices, then you could be considered the passive agent. We know this because research has shown that under controlled conditions, researchers have been able to predict decision-making of a subject up to 10 seconds prior to the decision being made, using fMRI brain scans to trace the path of the decision-making within the brain. This research has demonstrated that decision-making is primarily subconscious and is often determined prior to a person being consciously aware of it. On the other hand, if a person were to define you as the entirety of their neurochemistry, which would be inclusive of the subconscious brain, then the answer is easy. Yes, you would be considered the active agent because we know that all decision-making occurs within the nervous system.
That you have no choice in the matter. It's all external forces, be they environmental, genetic, chemical, biological, or neurological.
Yeah, that's neurochemistry, man. That's what we've been talking about.
In other words, do you think all your thoughts have external causes beyond your control? Or do you think that you control some, if not most, of your thoughts? Now let's stay with our lunch example for a second. Back to the question. I ask you, where do you want to go for lunch today?
Burger King.
Now, if all you are is a brain, an exhaustively physical system of neurons and synapses, then there's no you that's going to be making a choice at all.
Be careful with that kind of talk. We might all just fade away into non-existence.
Your thought processes are basically just a complex series of colliding electron dominoes crashing into one another. It's just physical cause and effect, right?
The evidence does show that decision-making is physical cause and effect. Decisions are made within the brain. There is literally no evidence suggesting that decision-making occurs outside of the physical structures of the central nervous system. Research into functional neuroscience has shown that decision-making occurs subconsciously in the brain before your conscious mind is even aware of any decision, as we mentioned before.
Something that can be exhaustively understood in terms of physics and chemistry. There's no you that's an agent that's deliberating or choosing or exercising free will. And that's why, if you are just a brain, you cannot have free will.
I am my brain. Decisions that are made within my brain are my decisions, whether subconscious or conscious. You can call that whatever you want. However, the point to get across here is I am my brain. Referring to free will, all of the evidence suggests all decision making occurs within the central nervous system. You don't choose your neurochemistry, and you don't control the input from the environment around you. So where do you propose we slot in this magical meta-brain of yours? We can even demonstrate the physical structure of the brain is the origin of decisions. Inject someone with oxytocin, give them alcohol, directly stimulate different sections of their brain, or damage certain parts of their brain and watch their personality change before your very eyes.
You would just be a physical machine, a very complex but programmed computer. But if you're something more than your brain, if you're the thing that has the brain, then when I ask you, where do you want to go for lunch? You're going to start deliberating.
That literally makes no sense. The brain deliberates. You are your brain, hence you can deliberate. We can already demonstrate using brain scans the process going on inside an individual's head during decision making. Where did you get this premise that if someone is only their brain, they can't deliberate?
You're going to be weighing your taste preferences, the commute time, perhaps even counting calories. You'd be weighing various reasons to choose one place over another. You wouldn't be caused to think about any of these things. You would choose to think about these things, and you could stop anytime you wanted to.
Or the brain could deliberate between various options to make a decision, as we can literally demonstrate. Are you serious? Are you seriously suggesting that decision making such as picking where to go for lunch requires something outside of the brain to make such a decision? We can directly link the pathway of hormones which control hunger all the way to the region of your brain which holds the memory for what pizza tastes like. We can literally watch your brain deliberate and even influence it.
So what we have here, therefore, are two different types of things: an immaterial mind and the material brain.
What? Where did you get that conclusion from? You did nothing to reach it. The decision making behind things such as where to go for lunch occur within the brain. We can literally watch that happen. Hook someone up to an fMRI, ask them where to go for lunch, and watch the brain light up as a decision is being made. Where did this second magic brain come from?
You are the thing that has the brain. You are not your brain.
Prove it, because the evidence suggests that the brain makes decisions. If someone was to electrically stimulate your brain, they could control your thought patterns. If there was a magical meta-brain making decisions, how come so many physical influences take over our decision making? Is the magical meta-brain also susceptible to alcohol, hormones, and gunshots?
Now look, even if you were the world's foremost brain expert and you knew what was happening with every electron in someone's brain at a specific particular moment, you still wouldn't have a clue about what's going on inside that person's mind. Surgeons can have access to my brain, but only I have access to my mind.
So a recent study actually showed that fMRI can be used to acquire images of what is going on inside someone's head at any given time. The technology is in early days, but this has demonstrated that at least on a rudimentary level it can be done. And even if they couldn't explain it, it would be an argument from ignorance fallacy to say just because it can't be explained, then it must be a magical meta-brain. prove the existence of this magical meta-brain.
This is what makes you human and not a machine. Psychology, the study of the mind, is not reducible to physics and biology and chemistry.
What about neuroscience? Neuroscience literally consists of all of the things you just listed and more. Neuroscience is showing us how the physical processes, such as those you mentioned, do affect the brain. Did you just forget an entire field of study?
Yet, there are many materialists, people who believe that physical matter is all that exists, that the only reality, including every thought, every feeling, every mind, every will, all of this, is totally explained in terms of matter in motion, simply physical phenomena.
No one is claiming that it has all been explained. Don't try to strawman people who hold that worldview. A materialist will assert everything is explainable by physical processes. The wording matters. Every process we have investigated and ultimately gained understanding of so far has been proven to be physical. All of the evidence that exists right now suggests that all thought is physical too. There is no evidence that anything immaterial exists or affects our reality. It is reasonable to at this moment assert that the physical is all we can prove exists. Never has magic ever been discovered to cause something. Prove your magic metabrain exists. Where is your evidence?
These materialists believe that we're no more than robots and that free will is an illusion, a myth.
Well, that's a matter of perspective. Like we discussed before, if you believe that you or another person is simply the sum of their biological parts, then they are the agent in control of their decision making. I am my brain, and though a person may not choose their own biology, their will is non-existent without those biological structures, so the argument for free will becomes non-consequential. It just boils down to a philosophical debate about the definition of free will. But reality remains unchanged, so don't try and appeal to people's emotional need to feel in control of their own lives. Reality doesn't conform to our own preferences.
Now, why do they believe this? Because they understand that the moment they acknowledge that free will exists, that there really is an immaterial you beyond the physical realm, that there really is a mind, not just a brain, then there has to be something non-physical that accounts for our non-physical minds.
So fallacy by assertion it is. Well, I'd love to humor you in this and follow this line of logic all the way to if there is a God, then there must be something that accounts for that God, and see if you still think it's a good argument. But honestly, there's no reason to take it any further because you simply haven't presented any evidence for your initial premise. So far it's just been appeal to emotion, hoping people will fall to the narcissistic side of human nature and just overlook the fact that you're making blind assertions.
Now, when you exercise your free will, and you choose to think about all of this, you're going to probably reason, just like I did, that there's a great mind that accounts for the origin of your mind.
Right, and there must be an even greater mind that accounts for his mind, and an even greater mind still that accounts for that mind. Well, I'm sure if you had more time, you would try and explain how you stumbled onto this line of thought. It's hardly convincing regardless. The reality is we don't have any evidence that demonstrates or suggests the existence of anything beyond the physical world. It's very appealing to believe that there is more than just the physical world, but to make assertions purely based on something because it's appealing, it's intellectually dishonest. To then try and reason based off that assertion, that's intellectually reckless. All evidence suggests that every facet of the human mind is linked to physical structures. There simply isn't a reason to suggest otherwise, at least a reason that isn't emotionally based.
But again, that's your choice. It's evidence of your free will. I'm Frank Pastore for Prager University.
I'm pretty sure that's the first time you have used the word evidence in this entire video. None of that was evidence of anything besides how little you understand neuroscience and free will.
Join Prager University. Click here to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
I would really rather not. That was enough for me. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel for weekly videos. Like this video and share it around to help us raise the bar of public discourse.